With the latest agriculture news from across the state and nation, it's time for the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. Here's your host, Sabrina Halvorson.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning here on the AgNet News Hour. I am Sabrina Halvorson here with Lorrie. Morning, Lorrie.
Good morning.
Today we are talking about ultra-processed foods. And the reason we wanted to talk about this was a couple of weeks ago, right at the start of the year, Governor Newsom issued an executive order cracking down on ultra-processed foods and also to investigate or to further investigating food dyes. And these are a couple of really interesting things. One of the major things that this executive order is going to do, it will affect foods that can be sold or found in our schools. And so a large part of this is targeted toward making school, the foods that your kids are getting at schools healthier. But there's some bigger implications here as well. So, examples of ultra processed foods include things like sodas and sports drinks, packaged snacks like chips and cookies and crackers, things like that. Also, some types of lunch meats and hot dogs, bacons, that can be counted as ultra processed foods. And a fact that I found to be really interesting from the National Library of Medicine says that ultra processed foods, Lori, already make up more than half of the total dietary energy consumed in high-income countries like the United States and Canada and the UK. So more than half of the food that we're eating right now here in the US are these ultra-processed foods. And we know that these ultra-processed foods lead to all kinds of health problems.
I did not realize that number, but it doesn't surprise me based on the fact that we want convenience, right? We want quick in and outs. We want to be able to grab and go. We have such busy lives these days. And I think that's a lot of it. So we do want to grab that stuff that's already processed and made and head out the door. Or, all the moms are working now. I think our society is different with double incomes coming in. And we want quick. We're tired at the end of the day, or we have sports or things going on. So you want quick. And what is quick? It's usually ultra processed food.
Yeah, you are absolutely right on track with that. I think about in my household, of course, now my kids, we're empty nesters. My kids are out of the house. But, we like you said, we both work. We come in at the end of the day. We're tired. I don't necessarily always want to cook a big old dinner, but it makes it so much easier. But I was thinking about, even aside from like our family dinners, my husband's diet, he's got to be way more than half ultra processed food. I mean, I swear that man just lives on ultra processed foods. And I mean, and that's his choice. I have to eat differently because I have a completely different metabolism. You know how it is. But how far are we allowed to make our own bad choices? That's the question that I have in my mind today is I agree these foods are bad and we don't need them being given to our school children for sure. But outside of the schools, talking about adults, because there's been talk also of like banning sodas and things. I will fully admit I am a Diet Pepsi addict. I have several a day. I cannot live without it. The idea if Diet Pepsi were to be banned, I really can't support that.
Yeah, this is actually something that you bring up that I've actually kind of grappled with personally for a while is at what point are we free to make our own choices? And even you and I talked a little bit about that in the dietary guidelines. But I do want to point out, I had to look this up. I know what a processed food is, right? But ultra processed food, I'm like, what exactly does that mean? Basically, that's the same thing. Ultra processed just means more processed than normal processed. And what that is altering food from its original form. So that could be a whole nother discussion. Like, what does that mean exactly? And to your point, my husband is a big fan of bologna and hot dogs. So I get that living with a person that was really into that. But any of these things that they don't consider whole foods, a lot of dietitians that are helping you with your eating plans and such, especially if you're trying to get fit or working on being healthier, will tell you to shop the perimeter of the store because that's where your actual whole foods and non-processed foods are going to be found. But talking about this kind of freedom, I do understand in this information that you sent me. I didn't even realize there was a link to mental health with some of the dyes and the things that are the preservatives and some of the unnatural, unhealthy things can really alter somebody who's growing up, so a youth that is growing up. So for that matter, we do want a healthy population, and I think we all do want our kids healthy. And I don't know that I even realized some of the things I gave my kids were were as bad as they were. But as you move into adulthood, yes, I struggle with this because if you don't, and here's a couple things, is I know that it is less expensive or cheaper to buy processed food than whole food. I know that personally
Hmm.
because I do try to eat halfway healthy and halfway clean, and it is way more expensive
It
than buying
is.
lunch meat. It
Agreed.
is.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, just on a daily basis. Like I said, I eat completely differently than my husband. His daily grocery budget is so much smaller than mine because he
Yeah,
is eating, the chips while I am eating the almonds and walnuts. And and it's sad. It really saddens me that there is such a price difference, and that makes healthy food inaccessible to so much of our population.
exactly, exactly. And with the exception of the nuts that you just mentioned, in general, the food lasts longer because it is processed and it has all kinds of
Yeah,
bad things in there that preserve it. So it
right,
lasts longer because when you buy some fresh fruit or fresh
right,
vegetables or whatever, which I love, by the way, if you
right.
can't get it eaten fast enough, then you end up throwing it away. And that's a lot of money to be throwing away if you average that out. But the other thing too is that you and I are talking about how we try. I'm not perfect, neither one of us is, but we try. But a lot of population doesn't try at all. So then
Mhm.
we're funding more expensive food through some of our social programs like SNAP. Well, that's not a good example, but through some of our programs where we are funding the higher costs, and then we turn around and we fund that same population using Medicare and Medicaid that we're also funding. And to me,
Yep.
that's not fair.
Right.
So I do grapple with this and go back and forth. So there's those of us who don't qualify for that. We're trying to make better choices and trying to stay healthy. The people that are on that, and I am generalizing, I admit it, can't always or don't always make as good of decisions based on what they can and can't do. But then we turn around and their health costs are higher.
Right. Yeah. I have some thoughts on that, but let's take a quick break and then we'll come back to it. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. We are talking today about banning ultra processed foods and what types of things are allowed, how many, how much do we have the right to make our own bad decisions, things like that. And, before the break, Lori, you had brought up that through a lot of our food programs, we do allow for ultra processed foods to be purchased. And then on the flip side of that, we know that these foods cause health problems. And so, again, through our same social programs, we are then paying for the health problems caused by these ultra processed foods. And so it's kind of a cycle that we're stuck in a little bit. And I'm not an expert on this at all, but it seems like there should be some kind of limit or something. I mean, there's got to be an answer here. I don't know what it is, but there's got to be an answer here where we can still allow people food freedom to have what they need. However, we're not encouraging it. And I think that that was kind of what the governor was encouraging with his executive order, actually, because it has to do with, well, first off, with removing some of these foods and problem chemicals from chemicals being the food dyes and additives, but removing those from school meals. Absolutely. When our kids go to school, they should be learning about healthy eating. They should be eating the foods that our farmers are growing for them. I mean, and especially in California, where we have so much available right here in the state. Especially here, we should be encouraging farm to school. And we do have good farm to school programs in many areas, and they work so well. We need to be expanding those across the state and encouraging more of and showing why eating that kind of food is exciting for our students.
And that is the best place to start, is at that student level. So I agree with you. I think starting at that level is a good call, is a good
Hmm.
call. But at what point does it then infringe on our personal benefits?
Right. And that's the question. How much should the government be dictating what we are allowed to eat? I don't know.
I remember when there was, oh, however many years ago in New York, there was a change or a ban, I guess, in selling larger size pops,
Hmm.
sodas, because of the sugar content, kind of the same type of thing that we're talking about here today. And there was so much pushback on that for this exact reason. But to my knowledge, that is still in place. I could be wrong on that. You can fact check me. I could be wrong. And it's kind of worn off now. Everybody's kind of used to it. So maybe that will happen here as well. But if you start infringing on personal freedoms here, at what point do we stop? And that's
Right.
to me, the bigger picture.
Right. And that's such an interesting question too, because also when we think about it, like cigarettes, there's a limit on cigarettes. You can't buy cigarettes if you're under 18 or, also alcohol. You can't buy alcohol if you're under the age of 21. So are we going to start putting age limits? Like you can't buy a soda if you're under the age of 12? I mean, how many times have you seen parents even young children sodas too? I think there's a
Right.
lot of education that needs to happen alongside this too.
Yeah. Now it's Starbucks coffee. So
Oh man, but that's already so expensive. How can you afford to
I
give
know.
Starbucks to your little children?
I think that all the time, but I tell you what, do I see it all the time as well. So there's
Yeah.
that. But yeah. And I don't know how you control this or figure this out. And people are always going to figure out ways around these systems. But I don't, on the same note, I believe people should have freedoms to choose what they're going to eat and consume and live. But I also don't think my taxpayer dollars should be paying for someone to have such unhealthy habits that it's causing them to frequent the hospital more or have heart disease or some other thing at a younger age. I shouldn't have to pay for their bad choices on that same note.
And I don't want to link them with this conversation, but so hear me through this. But programs like the International Fresh Produce Association, they have worked to get more fresh produce available to especially like to school children and to lower income people through social programs and things. And they have done great work on that. And I think programs like that are really our answer to getting people to shift from the ultra processed foods. And it benefits all the way around. I mean, we're going to have a healthier population, but we're also helping our farmers and ranchers who grow all of that produce. And that's another reason why it's so important. But I think it's so important to have programs like that. And we're just about out of time here. But it's so important to have programs like that to encourage the healthy eating. And I think that's going to be a better way to move away from the ultra processed foods is just continuing all this work that our organizations like the Almond Board and International Fresh are doing to show the nutritional benefits and how much better our healthy foods are for you.
I agree. I think it starts at that school level, but now we're going to have to it's going to take a little while to get there at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we have to head to another break. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Lorrie Boyer.
I'm visiting here today with Lisa Ellis, and she is the executive director of the Illinois Grape Growers and Vintners Alliance. Lisa, let's learn more about your background. I understand you do have strong ties to California.
Well, today I'm a little focused on what's going on in Southern California because I was born and raised there. So yeah, I've been in Illinois since '86, so most of my adult life, but my heart is definitely breaking right now with everything that's going on down there. But yeah, I've been in Illinois since 1986, and I've been with the Illinois Grape Growers and Vintners Alliance since November of 2018. So I guess I'm starting my 7th year in the job.
Lisa, tell me more about the organization and what you do there.
Well, we try to do it all with a very small staff. So actually, our organization was founded in 1992 when there were about 7 wineries in the state. Our founders thought enough to establish an organization, and they set out to grow an industry. And so today we have over 132 tasting rooms across the state. We do have some areas where they are more highly concentrated than the rest. So the winery growth has been pretty significant. One of our challenges that we're facing right now is decline in vineyard acres. And I don't think that we're alone in that, throughout the Midwest. So, but yeah, so we work with winemakers, obviously, and people who grow grapes. We have close working relationships with the Department of Agriculture and our state tourism department. The wineries are a big part of the tourism, hospitality industry in the state of Illinois.
How big is a grape growing and wine industry in Illinois?
Well, I can give you some quick stats from an economic impact report that Wine America did in 2022, or with 2022 figures. So I guess it was 2023. We make over 1 million gallons of wine are produced here in the state of Illinois. There are more than 60,000 jobs tied to the industry in this economic impact report. That does include tourism positions, and our economic impact is over $9 billion when it's all said and done. So we have over 1 billion tourist visits that have some connection to the wine industry. We're blessed with having Chicago in the state of Illinois, so our tourism impact is pretty high because of the large number of visitors we have coming in.
You mentioned you're from California. That is one of the places, of course, I think about when I think about wine. What makes wine in Illinois different?
Oh, well, the weather. We have all 4 seasons here, and the state of Illinois, I believe we have maybe 5 different growing regions. So can be 40 degrees warmer on any given day in the winter. But right now we're experiencing a cold snap that you don't see in the West Coast. So we cannot grow the same grapes that can be grown there. And even our regions north to south can't grow the same grapes. Up north, they have to be very cold hardy, whereas down south, with weather getting a little warmer even, we're seeing some more widely known varietals like Chardonnay, or maybe even a straight cab or a Merlot. They're experimenting with growing those right now. But so the grapes that we are known for are not so widely known by consumers, and we spend a lot of time educating people that they like Merlot. It's a nice dry red wine. We need them to try a Chambourcin or a Norton for an Illinois experience.
Are a lot of your members smaller growers, smaller vineyards, or are they large?
We only have a handful of wineries that are producing more than 50,000 gallons of wine a year. So we are all classified as small producers. The TTB defines a small producer as a winery that makes less than 250,000 gallons of wine a year. So we're all small.
Okay, well, I just learned something there. I did not know that.
I also like to use the word boutique. We're boutique producers, boutique craft producers.
Which means smaller batches and higher quality.
We are making some fantastic wines here. We got a later start than, say, our friends on the West Coast or even on the East Coast. But we run a wine competition every year, and I'm a big fan of numbers, and so I've charted like the number of entries, the number of gold medals, and things of that nature. And way back when we first started the industry, there was a significant amount of the entries that did not receive a medal because what was submitted had a flaw in it. And I think it might have even been approaching 30%, 30, 40 years ago. At our most recent wine competition, the percentage of wines that were submitted that had a known flaw in them was well under 10%. I think it might have even been under 8%. So with a significant increase in the number of gold medals, which, is a really well-made wine.
I'll continue my conversation with Lisa Ellis, Executive Director of the Illinois Grape Growers and Vintners Alliance, right after this. You're listening to AgNet West. Back we come here today. Once again, I'm Lorrie Boyer for AgNet West. Lisa Ellis is my guest here today. She is the Executive Director of the Illinois Grape Growers and Vintners Alliance. Do you do policy work and advocating on behalf of your members?
That is one of the things that is very important. And for a number of years now, we have been trying to raise the limits. We have some limits on what we can do here in the state. So, for example, if a winery wants to sell outside of their own footprint and they want to have a retail presence, if they produce more than 25,000 gallons of wine, they cannot do any self-distribution whatsoever. And so most of our wineries will stay well under that limit so that they have the ability to do some self-distribution. But the self-distribution in and of itself that we're allowed to do is only 5,000 gallons. And that doesn't really resonate with your average consumer or even your average legislator. But the retail value of that distribution is just $450,000, where our colleagues in the adult beverage industry in Illinois, the craft brewers, their caps are significantly higher, and a craft brewer can self-distribute product that exceeds $4 million in retail value. So we are working very hard to get our production cap and our self-distribution limits increased.
Talk to me about the permitting process.
It's a very regulated industry. And so, yes, they have to have a state permit. They have to have their federal permit. They have to have the permit for manufacturing and then to do the retail sales for the consumption. And so it's a highly regulated industry. We are not the most affordable place in the country. In fact, when you start looking at things like excise taxes and things of that nature that the industry has to pay, a glass of wine purchased in Chicago, Illinois is the highest tax glass of wine in the country.
I didn't expect you to say that. That's surprising.
Well, yes. And yes. And so we have a very strong impact on tax revenue in the state of Illinois. Again, we're working to get some things that are roadblocks to growth removed so that our businesses can grow and provide more jobs. And especially in Southern Illinois, without the wineries that we have, we do have a significant number of wineries in Southern Illinois in the Shawnee Hills AVA. Without those wineries there, the job market and the tourism market would be bleak.
What are some of the trends for growers and vintners when it comes to attracting new customers and consumers?
Well, one thing that we are experimenting with, I guess, is more single-serve beverages. In fact, we had a really nice panel discussion on that last year at our annual educational conference. And we were blessed last year to have some speakers that were in from other states. And so we put a panel together that included people from Texas and in addition to some of our people in Illinois, and, you know, just finding out how they're doing that, how it's going for them, and, you know, how they're putting it together, because it does take, the packaging on that is significantly different than the typical bottle that you see in the retail shelf. But that seems to be going well, and it's opening up new markets for some of our wineries.
And what do you foresee here for trends for the upcoming year?
Well, we're looking forward to working with our legislators and other distribution platform partners in taking a good hard look at liquor law. Our liquor laws are almost 90 years old, which is typical of most states. You know, after Prohibition, we came back and we made all these laws and rules and regulations. And I don't think Illinois is unique in the fact that it's not an industry that we take a look at, say, every 5 years and say, is this still working, and, you know, fix things. We've done these one-off solutions if someone needed the ability to direct to consumer ship or to use a different bottle size. It's been all of these additions to the law, which has now made it so complicated that, you know, in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, you need a lawyer to figure out what you can do or not. And so We are looking forward to working in the next fiscal year on a good, solid review of liquor code in the state of Illinois, and I'm hopeful that we might be able to kind of start over again. 90 years ago, we didn't have the technology that we have now. We didn't have the checks and balances that are in place for tracking product and sales and making sure it's all getting into the right hands. And so it just seems reasonable that it might be a good time to freshen that up.
Anything else you would like to mention, Lisa?
One of the things that is very critical for us is getting more vines in the ground. And unfortunately, our industry, we're tied to one harvest a year. And if we have a bad year weather-wise, for example, you don't have another opportunity for a harvest until the following year. And even if we start establishing new vineyards, it's probably 4 years before those vines are mature enough to give you fruit that is appropriate to use in the winemaking process. So
once again, my guest here today, Lisa Ellis, Executive Director of the Illinois Grape Growers and Vintners Alliance. I'm Lorrie Boyer for AgNet West. Stay tuned. Sabrina Halvorson is coming up next.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
For this segment, we have an excerpt of the Voices of the Valley podcast.
Hi, I am Caitlin Paulus-Case, Executive Director of SEAG.
Thanks for joining us on the podcast, Caitlin.
Thank you for having me.
So tell our listeners about SEAG and what inspired its creation, and also what SEAG stands for.
Yes, SEAG stands for Students for Eco Education and Agriculture. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have 4 primary programs in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties, and really what we do is teach students and the public about the farm origins of their food, agriculture, its nutritional well-being, and really how food gets onto our tables, who produces it and how it's produced.
Can you talk about the specific programs SEAG has in place to educate the community?
Yes, SEAG, we have 4 primary programs and initiatives. So our kind of founding inaugural program is Farm to Food Lab. It used to be just Farm Lab. Now that is a 3-part program. It focuses mainly on 3rd graders in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. We start with an introduction to ag in the classroom, a 1-hour presentation introducing agricultural topics. Then we have the second part is a 4-hour field trip to a working farm where we have station-based learning. A lot of what we do at SEAG we call experiential learning. So we're really focused on providing students and people with experiences, hands-on, on-farm experiences. And that's what part 2 of Farm Lab is. And there students learn about water science, soil science, plant science, and entomology, and really get an introduction into the entire food system, from how our food is grown to where it ends in the grocery store, the market. And then that brings us to part 3, which is back in the classroom. So that Farm to Food Lab program is a 3-part program for mostly 3rd graders. We have branched out into a couple other age groups. We also have a STEM career pathways and agriculture program, which is for middle and high school students. That is also a 3-part program that teaches middle and high school students about the diversity of career pathways in agriculture. A lot of times when students think about ag and careers, they focus really on labor-based jobs, but there are a lot of careers, as you know, in ag that are in marketing or sales or finance or hard sciences in a lot of different areas. So that program really helps open students' eyes to the career possibilities that they have within the industry. And then we have our Youth Wellness Initiative, which is our nutrition-focused program. It helps inform how we talk about nutrition and food, as that is the final product of ag and what we're talking to kids about, and informs our recipes and mindfulness in our programs. And then we have our Farm Day program, which is our community education program. We have Ventura County Farm Day and Santa Barbara County Farm Day, which are one-day events where farms open their doors to the public and offer free tours to the community. And then we also have our new Farm Day Every Day initiative, which is year-round tours and education to connect the community to their local growers.
Excellent. And you even work with a few Western Growers members, especially on those farm days that you were talking about.
We do. We are very fortunate to have some fantastic farm partners in both Ventura County and Santa Barbara County who have really recognized the importance of building a platform to connect with your community, not only for your immediate community, your employees and their families, but for the community at large. A lot of times people drive by ag land every single day in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties, but they fail to make the connection between the food that's being grown right there that they can see and the food in their grocery stores and all of the processes and people that it takes to get that food planted, taken care of, harvested, transported, stored, and ultimately to a market and on your table. So Farm Day helps growers and the community make those connections so that we can all support one another a little better.
Now, SEAG focuses on connecting the students in the community to the farm-to-table process. Why is that connection so important today?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I've been thinking a lot about it. What's interesting, and I think a lot of people would agree, we live in a time right now where misinformation and disinformation are so prevalent. It's really hard to go online and find 100% truth of anything. And I think what Farm Day and what SEAG has really been able to do is provide a platform for people to connect and get information directly from growers and directly from the people who are responsible for providing their food. And that is what I think is most important. I think if we all spent more time learning about something that we don't quite know and really learning, not diving into a social media TikTok hole or, hearing from a friend of something that they read online, but actually going to these places and asking firsthand from a PCA or from a farm manager, asking questions that you have about how food is grown and providing that education and that openness, I think, allows for a level of communication and understanding that is often missing, especially when we're talking about food that people can feel so passionately about. And natural resource management, these are not light topics. They're topics that people care immensely about, and providing a platform to have that engagement and connection, I just think is so important in today's world. We don't often have opportunities to ask people directly, not being behind a screen or behind some facade. And that's what SEAG is hoping to do, really, is make those connections for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a lot better for someone to say they heard this fact from an actual grower rather than seeing something on X or TikTok or Facebook or just reading the headline of an article, which so many people often do.
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting, the things that I hear from community members and students too. And students you can kind of give a little bit more forgiveness to, right? We're all still learning. And community members too. I mean, nobody's an expert in everything, but I think it's really important for us to take a look at the information that we're getting and who we're getting it from and being able to digest that and then make informed decisions. And that's really what education is about. I think education is one of the most powerful tools that we have as a society, is to be able to access education. And that's really what SEAG is about. We really believe that agricultural education and knowing where your food comes from should be a right and not a privilege, that everybody should have the opportunity to learn how your food is grown, who is growing it, and how it gets to your table. And really, when you learn that, it leads to preservation. Education leads to preservation. What you understand, what you're passionate about, what you care for, you preserve and you grow and you sustain. And that's really what our goal is, to make sure that our agricultural industry, our farmers, our growers, and our food is sustained and sustainable, and that we have a community that respects and understands it.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well said. Can you talk a little bit more about the role that farmers play in SEAG and how you collaborate with them?
Yes. So we are very fortunate, as I said, to work with a number of growers in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. It would take me a long time to list them all, but a lot of really fantastic ones of all scales. And the importance of working with them cannot be understated. To open up your farm or your operation to the community or to students can be daunting. It's definitely not an easy ask, and we really understand that you are opening yourself up to questions and you're opening yourself up to things that might not be super comfortable, but we really believe that it is really important. And I think our growers and our farm partners do too understand the importance of communication with community members who are living or driving by, or their kids go to school right next to these fields and right next, and their family members work in this industry, or their parents work in this industry, friends and family. And for them being able to have a connection to the community, not just in terms of sales and brand recognition. I think that's a big part of it too, is that when growers participate in Farm Day or participate in our programs, community members see that and they recognize it. And then when they see those labels in the grocery stores, I do strongly believe that they are drawn towards that, because there's a brand recognition. There's a recognition of this farm as having open communication with the community and of being a supporter of the community. But I think it works both ways for the farm too, to be able to have support, to be able to have advocates in the community that can speak to them and their operations in a positive way is really important. And it's invaluable for us at SEAG to be able to show students and community members and teachers the impact and the people in these industries that are massive on the Central Coast. Agriculture has some of the largest economic impact, and to be able to openly show these organizations to students and community members is really the basis of a lot of our programming. When we have students in our introductory program part of Farm Lab, we ask a question first for students. Raise your hand if you're connected to agriculture. And it's really interesting to see. Some students will raise their hands and say, oh, my dad works here, or my aunt works here. But what we're really trying to get at is if you eat food, you're connected to agriculture.
That's right.
Almost every act that getting dressed, you're connected to agriculture. And that's where we get to at the end of the program, is we all are living within this agro ecosystem. We grow a lot of food in the United States. No matter where you live, if you eat, you are connected to agriculture. And that's truly the basis of a lot of our programs. You don't have to live right next to a field growing broccoli to be connected to broccoli. If you see it in a grocery store, if you've ever eaten it at a restaurant, you're connected to it. Yeah.
That again was from the Voices of the Valley podcast. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson, and we'll be right back. Wrapping up our day today with a little bit of news. Last week, 427 national and state agricultural groups and agribusinesses sent a letter to the leaders of the U.S. Senate Agriculture Committee supporting Brooke Rowland's nomination as Agriculture Secretary and calling on the committee and the entire Senate to promptly confirm her for the cabinet post. The Senate Agriculture Committee has set Rowland's confirmation hearing for January 23rd. The groups noted that they represent farmers, ranchers, growers, hunters, forest owners, conservationists, cooperatives, state departments of agriculture, renewable fuel producers, and agribusinesses nationwide, encompassing all aspects of American agriculture, food nutrition, and rural America. A native of Glen Rose, Texas, Rowlands is the founder and CEO of the America First Policy Institute and America First Works, a pair of organizations that have championed Trump's agenda. Rowlands was also a member of President Donald Trump's Economic Advisory Council in 2016. That's all the time we have for today. I'm Sabrina Halvorson on behalf of Lorrie Boyer and myself. Thank you for sharing your morning with us.
To get more information on the topics you heard today, visit AgNet West at agnetwest.com. You can also stay connected by following us on our social media at AgNet West on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Also look for Sabrina Halvorson on Facebook, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast by searching for AgNet West on your podcast app. Thank you for listening to the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. AgNet West Radio Network, your primary choice for agriculture news.